So Flis Performance was nice enough to loan us one of their shop cars to take to our official test track, the Florida International Rally and Motorsports Park in Keystone Heights, Florida. Run some V-Box data on it, run a few laps, and it was really, really fun. So we're going to talk about what the V-Box data shows in just a few minutes, but let me give you some initial impressions of just what it's like to drive the car. The first impression you get of the car as soon as you hit the first few corners, especially if you've driven a stock MX-5 or even a mildly prepared MX-5, is this is way more of a race car than you may have given it credit for before. And a lot of that is due to the stiffness provided by that FIA spec roll cage. So what does it feel like to drive a really, really stiff car? Well, maybe the best term I can use is the resolution of the feedback is so much higher than it is in even a well-prepared street car, something with, polyurethane bushings and a stiff suspension. The amount of items that are moving independent of each other, taking data away from the feedback at that contact patch of that tire between that and your hand is seriously reduced. You drive the car and it feels like you have both of your hands sitting right on those contact patches because you get just a huge amount of feedback from all four of those contact patches. It feels very immediate, it feels very bright, but the car also takes a very light touch. It's a real fingertip sort of car, and what starts to happen is if you push too hard, you realize I've only got 181 horsepower to work with here, and you've got a lot of grip from the BF Goodrich tires. Those are the ones that we tested on. I know they're changing tires for the series upcoming in 2024, but we tested on a set of sort of slightly well-used BFGs. They still had a phenomenal amount of grip. So much grip that if you push too hard, you could feel the grip overwhelming the horsepower of that 181 horsepower Skyactiv engine. So it takes a very, very light touch. I can definitely see why anybody coming out of this series has success in other cars because they know how to manage all that friction. And that is one of the most important things you can learn behind the wheel of a race car is managing that friction and making sure that that friction of those four contact patches is working for you and not working against you. Now, if you do happen to get in too deep, the car is very benign. The front may push a little bit, the rear end may step out a little bit, but you've got all that grip to deal with, so getting it back under control is going to be fairly easy. But regaining your momentum is going to be the challenge at that point, because once you lose that momentum, you don't really have the horsepower to instantly get that momentum back the way you would in a 500 horsepower car. It's why you watch these MX5 Cup races, which I'm going to watch with a very different eye from now on, because I know that every single one of these drivers in these cars has that right foot buried on the throttle for the entire lap. The amount of full throttle racing in this series must be absolutely astounding. You are hardly ever coming off the throttle, essentially just for your, the initial phase of your braking, because you're usually left foot braking, so you're getting back to the throttle early to balance the car on turn, and it's very reactive to some 2-foot work. But if you get off of the throttle, you're going to get absolutely freight trained in a pack of MX5 Cup cars. So you can really see why they run in such close quarters, why if somebody makes the tiniest mistake, you're probably going to lose 2, 3, 4, 5 positions, and you're going to have a hard time getting back up through that field. Now let's contrast that with the Sadev sequential transmission. First off, it's very, very cool. It's cool being able to do foot to the floor, flat shifts, yank back to go up, push forward to go down. It's very cool having a sequential box in a Mazda MX-5. Now, the brakes also fantastic. I even took the opportunity to do a little bit of left foot braking, which I have really not done much of since my front wheel drive autocross days. But, it's like riding a bike. It came back pretty quick. And the fact that this thing has such a great feedback from the chassis really allowed me to get that left foot on onto that brake and get those release points right where I wanted them after just a few laps of getting my timing, getting that feel back in my left foot a little bit. It's something that I'm really looking forward actually to working back into my driving more, especially in these modern times of good automatic and sequential transmission. But it's a car that really teaches you how to do a lot, and because the resolution of the feedback you're getting is so brilliant, it's so immediate, it's so direct. It's a car that's probably also a fantastic learning tool for learning how to talk to a setup crew, or learning what traces on a data chart, how those translate into actual feel through the car. Absolutely amazing training bed, and I can completely see why the folks coming out of this series tend to have success as they climb the ladder further, or if they choose to stay in MX5 Cup, which is a fantastic place to hang out and experience amazing racing, why they become absolute fierce, top-notch competitors. So these ND2 MX5 Cup cars actually see their most prolific use not in the MX5 Cup series, but as club cars, as driver's school cars, as track day cars, and as non-MX5 Cup race cars. A lot of driver schools out there are using these for training. A lot of country club tracks own fleets of these that they use to rent to their members. A lot of folks are buying these just to go do track days with, and a lot of folks are racing them in non-MX5 Cup series. When you think about it, it kind of makes sense. It's a very easy to drive car. There's a huge knowledge base out there around it. It's a readily available chassis, and it's really easy on consumables. So even if you don't plan to go into the MX5 Cup series where the action is absolutely cutthroat, I can totally see why that would not be a goal for a lot of people. But even if you don't plan on running that series, there's a case to be made that this is a pretty interesting way to go racing or to get on track with a durable and, speaking in very relative race car terms, affordable way to go out there and turn some laps for a long time, and then have something that retains its value very well when you're done with it. All right, so let's take a look at the V-Box data from our laps with the MX5 Cup car at the firm. First off, you probably already, your eyes have shot over to see the time here. 1:19.71 was our best lap. Now, this was on a older set of BF Goodrich tires. It was also in a borrowed $100,000 race car. So we weren't going, 110% with the thing. But one thing I want to get across to you is that 1:19.71 is pretty much faster than any sporty compact car we have ever tested at the firm. In fact, it's right in the area with stuff like the early Toyota Supra, high performance BMWs, stuff like that. It performs like a much faster car, but it doesn't do it through horsepower. It does it through just phenomenal grip. In fact, with 181 horsepower, it's not really the fastest car down some of these straightaways, and with that sort of wide ratio set of gearbox, especially in the lower few ratios, you can definitely tell this is a car that's tuned more for running 80, 90, 100 miles an hour than 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, which is the predominant speeds on the firm. But let's just take a look, looking real quick at our data trace here overall. First thing we notice is, look at some of these razor sharp peaks for the braking. I mean, look at just how fast this car transitions from acceleration to braking. We'll even zoom in a little bit on this, and look, there is almost no lag in between the acceleration and braking here going into turn 5. The thing just absolutely has fantastic grip. It's got fantastic brake initiation, and this braking line just dives down at a consistent, quick rate. great grip, great race car responses from this thing. Some nice bleed off here at the bottom. You can see going into turn 5 here at the firm, we're able to sort of round off that speed curve, and that shows us sort of coming off the brakes a little bit, even though we're using a sort of out of practice left foot. Great responsive chassis, allowed us to do some of that trail braking into those corners and keep load on all 4 of those tires at once. So that was a nice thing, and that's got to be especially fun if you're in a pack of 30 other MX5 Cup cars, to be able to take those braking moments deep into those corners, brake all the way down to the apex, especially with other cars around you who are trying to do the same thing. It's great for confidence, and it's great for racing action. So I want to bring up another car here on the V-Box data, and that's going to be the new FL5 chassis Honda Civic Type R. Now, this Civic Type R was only a little less than a second slower than the MX5 Cup car, which is pretty quick for a street car, but you're also talking about a street car with over 300 horsepower. So you're talking about something with 130 more horsepower than this MX5 Cup car, and that's what it takes to just barely keep up with this handling monster of a Miata. So let's see exactly how that very low horsepower MX5 is keeping and bettering the pace of this Honda Civic Type R. Now, the Honda Civic is in the blue speed trace. You can see that every major cornering speed is dramatically quicker for the MX5 Cup car than it is for the Honda Civic. Let's look at the speed here in turn 4, the sort of fast right-hand kink. We're actually having to do some substantial braking in the Honda. You see speed bleeding off there from very similar terminal speeds, mid 80s miles an hour, down to just barely slower than 80 miles an hour in the MX5 Cup car, all the way down to 73 miles an hour entry speed in the Honda Civic, and the MX5 Cup car just breezed through there like it's barely even there. Just a tiny little speed adjustment on the way in, and one that we maybe could have gotten away without doing if it was a car that we were more familiar with. We wanted to be friends with the builders a little bit longer. You can also see, though, that this Honda has a definite horsepower advantage, especially in the acceleration department here, coming through what is third gear for the Honda, and this is second up into third gear for the MX5 Cup car. Pretty similar speeds through this wiggly portion right here, quick right left. Of course, there's a lot going on there, and with the lower horsepower of the MX5 Cup car, a little bit of scrubbing there can limit your exit speed, whereas that Honda has the ability to make up for any mistakes with horsepower. But we see the horsepower here as the Honda just accelerates right away from the MX5 Cup car using that additional horsepower. But the shift of the Honda slows things down a little bit. That 3/4 shift in the Honda, of course, takes a tenth of a second or so when the car is doing nothing, and the fact that the sequential gearbox in the MX5 Cup car doesn't need that lag time definitely makes up for it a little bit there. Take a look right here. We can see, particularly in this braking section right here, which is turn 4 going into the braking section of turn 5. Look how much steeper the deceleration is on the MX5 Cup car than it is on the Honda Civic. We can see this red line going down at a much steeper angle, showing that car is losing speed quicker than the Honda. That's another place that is allowing that MX5 Cup car to stay on the gas longer, even though it's not really getting to that terminal speed as fast as the more powerful Honda is. When it's time to get rid of that speed, does it in a lot less time than the heavier car with the less sticky tires. And then again here on turn-in, we can see our turn-in speeds in the Civic, you know, nearly 5 miles an hour slower than it is in the MX-5 Cup car. So overall, we see that if we look down here at the V-Box delta graph, which shows us where these speed graphs are diverging time-wise from each other, we can see that it really starts right here in this turn 4 right-hand kink. This is where our time starts diverting. The Honda makes a little bit of it back right here. We can see this delta line starting to go back down. Well, guess what? That's an acceleration zone. That is both of these cars getting on the throttle, and the Honda just simply has more throttle to give, especially through the meat of third gear there. So it's going to make a little bit of that time back. But every time you get into a cornering area or a braking area here, we can see this delta line just continue to climb out of the reach of the Honda by the superior cornering of the MX-5 Cup car. So that's how it's making its time, is purely through grip, purely through the cornering horsepower rather than the accelerating horsepower. Just doing it through massive lateral grip, fantastic braking initiation and deceleration, and it's making up for 130 plus horsepower deficit around our test course. Phenomenally fun car to drive. Huge shout out to our longtime friends at Flis Performance for trusting us with the car and letting us go out and run some data on it. I hope you learned a few things about the MX-5 Cup cars, and if you ever get a chance to sit behind the wheel of one of these things, absolutely can recommend, because it will teach you a lot about yourself as a driver. It definitely rewards good habits, and it very quickly punishes bad habits with a loss of momentum, just because there is so much grip, there is so much friction to be had there, that any overuse of that friction is going to slow you down pretty quickly. So it pretty much forces you into some good habits if you want to go fast. And as we can see from every clip you've ever seen of racing these things, makes for some phenomenal racing. So folks, that is it. If you want to see more content from Grassroots Motorsports, well, you can check us out on the web at grassrootsmotorsports.com. Please go right down below this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You will get the first crack at all of the content we post here on YouTube. And we'll see you next time at the track. Thanks for coming by.
Support brands who support Grassroots Motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. To learn more, visit crcindustries.com.